we'll do a Q&A, and anyone who has questions, please feel free to ask a question. But can I ask you what this cult was, or what it was called?
Yeah, yes, the cult was originally called St. Benedict Center. It was formed in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it started off as a Catholic community. But they became very doctrinaire about one dogma of the Catholic faith, which was you had to be a Catholic to get to heaven. And they were so doctrinaire about it that they got excommunicated. And then we were this tiny group of 100 people, and we were living in Cambridge, and we had this red fence around all our houses. And I was a very curious child. And these people were highly intellectual and highly educated. My father had gone through the war as a naval officer, and he was then at Boston College getting his master's in philosophy. I mean, they came from Syria, from Lebanon, from Italy, from Spain, and they were my uncles and aunts. I mean, it was my life until when I was 5 years old. The decision was made at the top by the priest and by this woman, Catherine Clark, who ran the place, to separate the children from their parents, to force the parents into taking vows of celibacy, and turning us into a monastic regime where silence was the rule at all times and corporal punishment was abusively used. And that was life. And the fences were drawn, and within that you learned to live and to actually have fun. But the fact of the matter is, what I most missed was not being able to talk to my parents. We weren't allowed to talk to them, but my father broke all the rules, and he used to just go like that to me or to any of us. And on my birthday, and we weren't even allowed to celebrate birthdays, on my birthday and on his birthday, we would seek each other out. And he would always say, "Happy birthday, my little princess." And that was what he had called me from the time I was an infant. And so I was being trained to be a nun. At around the age of 14, I started having crushes. And that did not make me fit to be a nun, thank goodness. And so Sister Catherine, that was what we called her at that time, she made the decision. The day I graduated from high school, we were trained and schooled in our own community. I was going to leave. I had never seen a TV show. I had never gone to the cinema. I'd never been to a supermarket. I'd never held a dollar bill in my hand. And I was thrown out. So that's why I had to say I was eyes open, ears open, and mouth shut until I learned how to engage.
And was that the day you walked into an office to get a reception job, or
no? She allowed that I would go to secretarial school.
Okay.
So
right.
I spent that year getting, and then I was given a short period of time to actually teach typing, and it was the most mindless thing, and I really just so wanted to be in a classroom and learning. And so when I got the receptionist job, then I went on the path to getting my degree at nights.
Anybody else questions? Or?
Yes.
You don't sound bitter about having been in what was a really difficult, abusive Catholic cult. How did you manage that?
I'm not bitter. And I think, eventually Sister Catherine died 2 years after she kicked me out. She was the only glue that held the place together. It started to crumble. Then the families all left, and my parents came out with 2 of my children, and then 2 others came out after that. And it was very interesting. I have never felt anger at them. The only anger I have felt is against Sister Catherine and Father, because they, to me, were the ones that forced my parents into that. Could my parents have said no? Of course. But they were not in that way of thinking. They wanted to do what they felt was best for us. I can get upset at what Sister Catherine did. Yes, I can. On the other hand, I've now made this discovery that in her own way, she was a role model for me. And so I got something out of that. For me, optimism is an easy way of life. I mean, we all have terribly frightening and disconcerting issues, but if I spend all my time being angry, there's nothing I can do about the past. And so for me, it was, that happened in the past. look to the future. And my father used to say that to me. Don't cry over spilt milk. You know, what's happened has happened. And I would not change a single thing. I mean, would I change the ability to live with my parents? Of course. But the way my life unfolded, I wouldn't change anything. How do I know that I would be here today with what I have, a happy family life, a wonderful career, second career, third career, mentoring, giving back. I'm immensely happy.
I have another one for you.
Yes.
You said you went from a research analyst into the portfolio management.
Yes.
How did you find that transition? Was it easy after being a research analyst, and did you have any like horrible experiences?
Oh, I had some interesting experiences, which are some of which are in the book. You know,
Okay.
Nothing is done without failures. But interestingly, I had a beautiful corner office when I was, in that director of all the capital goods. And then I went to a tiny little office next to the big man portfolio manager, and I was working with him, a wonderful, wonderful man, about 20 years older than I was. But for me, it didn't bother me. I was now on a new challenge. That first year was 1982. I started in January of 82. And not everyone may remember, but the summer of 82, the market hit a low. And that Peter Vermillier walked into our offices on August 12th, which was a Thursday, I remember absolutely clearly. And he walked in to everybody's office. He walked in my office, stood right there and said, "Get invested, 100%. I want every bit of your cash invested by the end of the day." And then he said to me, "Where's so-and-so?" I said, "She's in Paris with her husband on vacation. Invest her money." I said, "I can't invest her money." He said, "Yes, you can." He was right to the day. And I ended up, because I had been so nervous about the market, I had been holding a 30% cash position. And so I was now 100% invested on the day the market bottomed. I outperformed the market that first year by 1,000 basis points. I mean, that is all you can say is beginner's luck. I had many years when I did nothing like that. But Peter the next year gave me more and more accounts and more money. And while it was a very different experience to be managing money, and you have to learn a lot about many industries, that in itself is also an education. And I never lost some of my contacts with the CEOs and the CFOs. So it was a wonderful migration ultimately.
Okay. Now you've written 2 memoirs.
Yes.
What has given you, I mean, obviously you've done very well in the business world. What has given you the inclination to write these memoirs? Obviously one is because you grew up in a cult and that story is there, but you obviously you have a bug or an interest in writing. Why did you?
Well, I have come to love writing, but I had to learn the craft. But with my first book, I was 55 years old, sitting with my parents on the porch up in Rhode Island looking out over the ocean, and I said to them, "Mother and Dad, I'm thinking of writing the stories of my childhood." And they were both so supportive. They knew the stories of my childhood. And I said, I look back with my childhood with a lot of pleasure. So that was 55. I didn't even start writing till I was 60, and by then my father, who had become 90, had just passed away. My mother was, 12 years younger. She read every line, every chapter in my first book, Little Sister. She said, "Some of it makes me sad, but it's all true, and you need to publish it." So I knew and I dedicated the book to my parents. And I knew I had their support. And I thought I was one and done. But then I had friends who said, no, you've got to write the second book, because the first book just takes you so far, and you had this wonderful career. And I said, oh my gosh, so many people have wonderful careers. I don't know why mine is any different. But the arc of the story is kind of wonderful. When you start off, in a cult, you don't even know what the word SHIT means, which is a story in my book. And then you end up, doing wonderfully well, and then giving back. So I took the advice of friends and colleagues and family to say, okay, I'll put pen to paper. This one, fortunately, only took 4 years to write. The other one took 10 years to write. So.
And do you have a favorite section in the book?
Oh my gosh. I really love some of those very early experiences where I'm really naive and don't know anything. Because I love reminiscing about how naive I was and how nervous I was, and how sometimes, strobe lights and marijuana were the nice things to hide behind, and loud noise, so that nobody would ask me a question that might out me in some way. So it's kind of fun to relive that without the anxiety that it caused back then. But it's been a lovely progress. I very much loved the time emotionally when I left Wall Street and was home. That was such an important time. I've put a lot of pictures in the book to kind of make it seem, well, as homey and family as it is. I love the fact that as a family, my whole family came together again, and then my children, who are now 30 years old. So I think that there are some very poignant parts of when I was really young and naive.
Okay. You say that you mentor or coach high school women or college women.
Yes.
And in this environment today, I would say it seems like a tough environment for young people to find careers, to expect to be as successful as their parents may or may not have been. What kind of advice would you give to those young women?
I think one of the strong takeaways from my book and from my lived experience, which I want to share, is that adaptability. Be flexible. Take advice from others. Put your hand up. I'm happy to help. Be the first one to say yes. And I think, frankly, millennials and Gen Zers get short shrift. I think we've all developed in our own way. I was very much alive and young in the late 60s, which makes some of the demonstrations today seem tame relative to what was happening back then. Granted that the Vietnam War was very close to home, but I think young people go through a certain turmoil phase. It's part of growing up. And I see the good in so many young people. And I've watched my own children, go through those phases and then come out at the other end. And that period from, 15, 18, leaving your home, going to school, and then trying to decide what you want to do with your life. I did not know what I wanted to do with my life at all. And I don't think you have to. I think if you take something, work your best at it, it's going to lead you in one way or another to something else. Don't be disappointed. When I talk to young people in college, I say, I am much more interested in a resume that says, I majored in accounting and minored in French history, than one that says, I majored in accounting and minored in finance. I want to see you take risks when you're in college. And if you take those risks, maybe you won't get a 4.0, but this much I promise you, your first job is not going to be your last. And don't treat it as though it will be. So I'm encouraged to see young people doing a variety of things in a different way. COVID had a huge impact on all of us. On many people, like baby boomers like me, they just simply left the workforce and haven't come back. That was their response. And for them, it was probably the right thing to do. Other people got used to working from home and don't ever want to go back into an office. But there's society and there's business, and we see that there have to be certain norms. And I think that, ultimately, to be successful, you're going to have to work at it. And if you are offering up to do things, I strongly support that.
I have one more question, if you're okay with it. Let's say one of these young women come to you, depending on her age, and she says, should I buy or rent?
Well, there's not a straight answer for that, of course. It depends on whether you're going to be mobile. If you're planning to go hither and yon, why do you just stick yourself with a house? It depends on what kind of capital you have as a down payment. It depends on what you're earning right now. It depends on what your life is about. In the long run, I think most people do want to own their own home, and it's always been a kind of a success in this country. a measure of success. But I don't think you have to do it too early. And I wouldn't encourage people to strap themselves and then find themselves in a crisis because they're moving to another city and they're stuck with real estate.
Okay, great. All right, Patricia Walsh Chadwick, thank you very much for being with us today. We've enjoyed this interview or talk, and we've enjoyed the guests that you've brought along as well. So thank you very much. We're going to ask you to sign some copies.
Yes.
And we're going to put the signed copies as online when we promote the book. So you can get signed copies if you order from the description in the link below on our YouTube channel. So thank you again.
Thank you, John, very much. Really, really appreciate it.